Africa, a continent of immense cultural diversity, natural beauty, and rich history. Yet for decades, the portrayal of this vast land has been mired in stereotypes, myths, and misconceptions, often perpetuated by the global media. But how did we get here? In today's lecture, we explore the essence of communication, a vital tool that shapes perceptions. Communication at its core is the sharing of meaning, a dynamic process that forms the foundation of human interaction. Throughout history, media has played a critical role in the dissemination of these messages. But what happens when the messages shared are incomplete, biased, or outright false? Africa's image in global media has been the subject of intense academic debate for years. In 1973, leaders of the non-aligned movement raised concerns about the negative portrayal of developing nations in Western media. The consensus was clear: control over information often equals control over global perceptions. This laid the groundwork for the New World Information and Communication Order, a movement aimed at balancing the flow of media content between the global North and South. Yet, despite these efforts, Africa's representation has remained largely negative. The question arises, why is Africa portrayed this way? Scholars point to several factors: colonial history, racial stereotypes, and parachute journalism, a practice where journalists drop into a region during a crisis without fully understanding the context. This perpetuates a skewed view, often focusing on conflict, poverty, and disease. But what are the consequences of these limited narratives? Walter Lippmann, a political commentator, referred to this as the creation of pictures in our heads. These images, shaped by the media, affect not just how others see Africa, but how Africans see themselves. In the modern world, powerful media outlets like CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera dominate global news. These platforms have been critiqued for their portrayal of Africa. For instance, in covering events like the Boko Haram crisis or the Chibok girls' abduction, the language used often paints Africa as a helpless, war-torn continent in need of salvation. Yet the truth is more complex. There are positive stories of growth, resilience, and innovation across Africa that rarely make headlines. The stereotypes go beyond news. In popular culture, Africa has often been depicted as primitive or backward, especially in Western films and music. From animation studios like Disney to popular Hollywood films, the African character is frequently portrayed through a lens of victimization. Even Africa's own media, including the globally popular Nollywood industry, has at times been complicit in reinforcing these stereotypes. But has Africa contributed to its own negative image? Scholars argue that poor governance, corruption, and internal conflicts have provided fuel for negative portrayals. Leaders who fail to address these challenges allow the negative narratives to persist. For instance, African leaders like Mobutu Sese Seko, who ruled the Democratic Republic of Congo for over 3 decades, siphoned billions of dollars into personal accounts while his nation descended into poverty. Mobutu's regime was marked by opulence, with lavish palaces and extravagant lifestyles funded by the country's wealth. Today, many of these palaces lie in ruins, a stark reminder of how the continent's resources were squandered. His wealth, once thought to be endless, has left behind nothing but decay. Mobutu is not alone. Leaders like Nigeria's Sani Abacha, Egypt's Hosni Mubarak, and Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe all amassed enormous personal fortunes at the expense of their people. The billions they embezzled, which could have been used to build schools, hospitals, and industries, now lie wasted in foreign accounts or spent on assets that have no lasting value. The people they governed remain impoverished, and their nations struggle to recover from decades of plunder. In 2014, Nigeria was struck by the abduction of 276 schoolgirls by Boko Haram militants. The incident captured global attention, but it also revealed how corrupt governance had crippled Nigeria's ability to respond to security threats. Foreign media outlets like CNN and Al Jazeera highlighted the tragedy, but their coverage often framed Nigeria as a helpless, incapable state, desperate for foreign intervention. The root causes, however, lay in systemic corruption. Money meant for national security had been siphoned away by officials, leaving the military underfunded and ill-equipped to protect its citizens. The narrative of Nigeria as a failed state was reinforced, but the underlying corruption remained largely unaddressed. Africa is not a monolith. It is a continent of 54 nations, each with its own challenges and triumphs. Some African nations, like Botswana and Ghana, have long been symbols of political stability and democratic governance. Cities like Lagos and Nairobi are becoming hubs of technological innovation, while Nigeria's booming Nollywood industry has captivated audiences worldwide. These are the stories that deserve to be told. Moving forward, it is imperative that Africa begins to tell its own story, to challenge the single narrative of poverty and despair, and replace it with a balanced, authentic representation of its people and progress. Global media needs to reflect the diversity, resilience, and potential of the African continent. This is not just the responsibility of the West, but of Africa itself. In conclusion, as the global media landscape evolves, so too must Africa's image. The time has come for Africa to reconstruct its own narrative, one that reflects the complexities, the challenges, but also the successes and aspirations of a continent on the rise.